And even in the times of a pandemic, the Constitution cannot be put on hold.
Hello, and thank you for joining us once again here at the First Amendment Museum, located in Augusta, Maine, for this installment of our online one-on-one series. Today, I'm joined by our new special guest, Andrea Picciotti-Bayer. Andrea, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, Max, thanks so much for inviting me. I'm the director of the Conscience Project, which is a organization that's focused on advocacy, both legal and public education, around the issue of religious freedom and conscience rights in America and internationally.
Why do you think the First Amendment is important?
They're important for civic life, and they're incredible restraints on the government. And they're important because we see that this kind of very capacious understanding of religious freedom in particular allows for individuals, families, communities, and our country to thrive.
Why is religious freedom so important?
We know in our First Amendment, it's really so important. We've got two clauses that speak to religious freedom. The first is the Establishment Clause, and that basically makes sure that the government doesn't take over organized religion. But at the same time, it allows our country to celebrate our rich religious pluralism and our tradition of pluralism throughout our founding. And then we've got the Free Exercise Clause, and that allows each individual American both to be able to worship without interference from the government and to be able to contribute to the public square consistent with their beliefs.
In your opinion, what are some of the biggest threats to religious freedom in the United States today?
Well, that's a really interesting question because the threats have changed. And most recently, I think the greatest threat is that the government, whether it be the federal government, state, or even local governments, are trying to put religious freedom as a second-class right when we're looking at other civil rights or policy priorities. And I'm thinking particularly of religious individuals or organizations that hold traditional beliefs related to marriage, sexuality, sexual orientation, gender identity, and the sanctity of the unborn. And we're finding more and more that the expansion of anti-discrimination laws are coming kind of at a heads with some of these traditional views. And instead of finding it for exemptions or accommodating religious believers, they're being told it's an either or game. And that's not the way that we should think about civil rights.
What are some of the challenges litigating religious freedom cases in the American court system that you've sort of experienced?
Well, in the last couple of years, during the pandemic especially, we saw that a number of governors can use their authority, executive authority, to basically do what was called worship targeting. They came up with percentage or attendance standards for worship that were much more restrictive than standards for going to a big box store, or in the case of Nevada, to go to a casino. It took the Supreme Court several months before they stepped in, but when they did, they said, look, you cannot treat religion differently than other secular activity. And even in the times of a pandemic, the Constitution cannot be put on hold. And even in the state of Maine, both Maine and New York have imposed vaccine requirements for healthcare workers while allowing for medical exemptions. They're not allowing for religious exemptions. So while those controversies are bubbling up in our courts, I think that the Supreme Court's going to have to, again, talk about treating religion on the same plane as other interests, other secular interests as well.
How do you use your First Amendment freedoms in your everyday life?
Well, Max, I was thinking about that, and I have, the professional hat and the personal hat. The professional hat, I write a lot. So the freedom of press allows me to be able to share my ideas in publications without the government silencing or censoring those ideas. I'm also able to contribute with amicus briefs, friend of the court briefs, in cases related to religious freedom and conscience rights. And that's part of our right to petition the government. But on a personal note, I'm the mother of 10. And I'm a devout Catholic, and I try to create the opportunity for them to not only learn about their faith, but also how their faith is protected and recognized here in this country, teaching them about these protections that we have in the Constitution and other laws, and really hoping that I can be an example for them in my life so that they can then follow that as they grow and become adults and contribute as public citizens.
Well, Andrea, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your time and your insight to some of these issues.
Max, it's been a pleasure. And thank you so much and good luck with all of your programming at the First Amendment Museum.